In this video, I will analyze Scott Ritter's thoughts on if Israel can become a dominant player in the Middle East, the problem with Zionism, the U.S. involvement and imminent backlash, plus the greatest military operation in modern history. Let's go!
No one can do it better.
Well, first of all, just demographics alone dictate that Israel cannot be the dominant player in and of itself. 9 million Jews does not give you the demographic ability to dominate hundreds of millions of Arabs. So swamp is what happens when 100 million people make 9 million disappear. Now, that's not what I'm advocating. I don't want that. I believe that that should not ever be allowed. And to be honest, while there might be a handful of people in the Islamic community that seek that kind of revenge on Israel, my limited knowledge of Islam is that it is a religion of peace, and that it advocates the peaceful coexistence of people of the book. So the notion that Muslims are inherently programmed to kill Jews is just stupid. It's just frankly wrong. The problem isn't Judaism. The problem is Zionism, and political Zionism. And political Zionism can only exist if Israel is backed by the collective strength of the Western world, in particular the United States. The United States is the guarantor of political Zionism. And so when you take a look at what's happening right now, Israel is in the process of losing the support of the United States. For the first time ever, we're seeing massive demonstrations in the streets of the United States, not in support of Israel, but in support of Palestine. And these demonstrations, in many cases, take a sympathetic approach towards Hamas even, and an understanding of what happened on October 7th and why it happened. And I think there's also an appreciation of the goals and objectives of the October 7th operation. It wasn't designed to drive Israel into the sea. It was a very clever operation designed, I believe, to achieve three things. The creation of conditions necessary for the creation of a Palestinian state, a legitimate Palestinian state, not the fake Palestinian state that Israel's been trying to sell to the Palestinian people and stuff, as we see in the Abraham Accord. That's not a Palestinian state. That's a joke. That's a travesty. A genuine Palestinian state, at a minimum along the lines envisioned by the Oslo Accords, a two-state solution, 1967 borders, but even that was an Israeli dictated outcome. A real Palestinian state, I think, has to take into account the 1948 borders, and things of that nature. But that's a political discussion. That's a political discussion that's going to be had by people moving in that direction. But we're talking about it now because of October 7th. This is the important thing.
That's awesome, because that was my second question. If you were the leader of Hamas before October 7th, would you have ordered to perform the October 7th operation? So this was like a master plan, in your own opinion, that was planned by Hamas?
I believe this was a masterful plan by Hamas. They made one strategic error. I think it's common knowledge that the Hamas fighters are extraordinarily well disciplined. They're very capable. They're very religious. They're very disciplined. When you're at war, there will be horrific consequences of war. And there was no way Hamas could launch the attack it did without Israeli civilians being caught up in the crossfire. But even the Israeli army acknowledges that the majority of the atrocities that took place on October 7th were not committed by Hamas. They were committed by
the IDF soldiers,
enraged civilians well, there was you have the crossfire, the overreaction of the Israeli forces, but you also have a situation where Hamas came through the barrier, and behind them came less disciplined forces who had revenge on their mind. They weren't part of the planning of the operation. They were reacting based upon an opportunity. And these are people who had been bombed, tortured, arrested, beat. Hamas launched the attack not with hate in their hearts, but with the discipline of a military force carrying out a military mission. But these follow-on echelons came out, and they, I believe, committed many atrocities. And Hamas's strategic mistake was not to have people controlling the entry into Israel, to have Hamas forces there telling these undisciplined people, no, you shall not come in here. I think that was a mistake because it has diluted the impact of Hamas's military achievements by giving Israel the ability to carry out a counter-propaganda campaign that highlights genuine instances of abuses, of atrocities carried out by Palestinian gunmen coming from Gaza that Israel has been able to say this was Hamas. It wasn't Hamas. Hamas performed in a very disciplined fashion. I'm not saying they didn't kill Israeli civilians, but they didn't seek out the murder of Israeli civilians. And many of the Israeli civilians who died, as you pointed out, died because they were caught up in a crossfire between Hamas fighters and Israeli fighters. And also not just Hamas fighters, but many of these non-Hamas militants who went in there got trapped in Israel. They were taking hostages. They got trapped in the various kibbutzes and military encampments. They didn't have the discipline to withdraw back into Gaza. So they were trapped with hostages, and the Israeli force came in and killed them. And when you look at the dead fighters, they said, these are Hamas. They weren't Hamas. They were other militants, people from different factions, or just civilians who took up a gun. But that's, I think, was the mistake of Hamas. This was a very well-planned, well-executed military operation. They should have foreseen that there would have been a surge of hate-filled emotion coming out of Gaza to take advantage of the holes that appeared in the fence. And they should have done something to stop that.
So, from your point of view, what Hamas did from a military point of view is good. They did a good job, excellent job. But they made a mistake of not controlling the extra mobs, whatever you want to call them, the people who just came after that. So,
yeah, because if you're a military commander is responsible for everything that happens in their area of operations, everything that happens. When you take control of an area, when you initiate an operation, you are in charge, and you have to take responsibility. Just like if I were a Marine who took over a neighborhood, I am responsible not only for defeating the enemy forces arrayed before me, but securing the welfare of the civilians that are in that neighborhood. I must ensure that I have a methodology to prevent looting, to prevent robbery, rape, murder. I'm responsible. And if I don't do that, then it's my fault. So 100%. Hamas has to own this.
Okay, so go ahead.
It's a minor debating point. The point is, generally speaking, what Hamas did on October 7th is one of the greatest military operations in modern history.
So let's say that in an alternative universe, Hamas actually took control over the people who came with them, the mobs. Do you and we didn't see the number of civilians got killed in Israel, or all that too much propaganda material inducing propaganda? Do you think Israel would have reacted the same way they have reacted now?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter
because they were humiliated.
Yes, they got humiliated. Exactly.
And I also believe that, and again, Hamas can speak for itself. This is my assessment. I believe Hamas always intended for Israel to react the way it did. This is part of the trap. Hamas cannot win politically unless they get the world to change their opinion about Israel. The world will not change their opinion about Israel unless Israel slaughters the Palestinian people. Israel, since 2006, has articulated a policy, the Dahiwa principle, named after the suburb of West Beirut, that they flattened in 2006 as a way of collective punishment for the successful resistance of Hezbollah. Israel has said that it is our policy to hold the civilian populations accountable for the actions of those organizations who are opposing us. So against Hezbollah, they flattened Beirut. They flattened a variety of towns. They collectively punished the civilian population. In 2008, they turned the Dahiwa principle against Gaza for the first time, and they've used it against Gaza 2008, 2010, 2014, 2018, 2020, 2021. They've bombed the civilian population. It's what Israel does. And so Hamas, I believe, lured Israel into a trap by humiliating their military, by inflicting this tremendous defeat. It's an absolute humiliation against Israel. They knew that Israel would respond by bombing the civilian population. Now, some people will say that's cold-hearted on the part of Hamas. You know, Charles de Gaulle in 1944 was approached by the military command, Dwight Eisenhower and others, and said, we're going to liberate France. We're going to launch an attack on Normandy. But to do this, we are going to have to bomb areas where there are French civilians. We will be killing a lot of French civilians. And Charles de Gaulle said, how many? They said tens of thousands. He said, they must die in the interest of liberty.
For the big cause.
60,000 French civilians were killed during the Normandy campaign. 60,000, because that is the price that has to be paid for liberation.
For the Palestinian
Hamas
state.
understands that there must be a price paid by the Palestinian people if Gaza is to be liberated from Israeli oppression. And so the Palestinian people are the true heroes of this conflict.
Of course.
Because they are standing, they are suffering, but they are not yielding. They are not surrendering. They are there, and their continued presence is frustrating for Israel. Israel wants to evict them all from Gaza, wants to kick them out, but they won't be kicked out.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's horrible, but I think it's one of these horrible necessities of life that if there is going to be a free Palestine, an independent Palestine, it can only be built on the blood of the martyrs who are being sacrificed in that cause.
That's a good analysis there by Scott Ritter. I do agree with a lot of the things that he said, but I do want to add on a couple points here. Yes, the demographics alone means that Israel cannot be a dominant player in the Middle East because they're so small in number. He said 9 million. I think it maybe even be like 7 million. But yeah, they're surrounded by hundreds of millions of Arabs who know that they shouldn't even be in that land. You see what I'm saying? That they shouldn't be there. And Ritter said he's not advocating for the end of Israel. You know what? I'm not even advocating for the end of it, but it should be moved to where their homeland is, which is in Eastern Europe, because they are the Khazars. They are not the children of Israel. Okay? It's been proven time and time again. They don't fit any of the curses. We know their bloodlines. Look at some of my videos on there, especially the one about Netanyahu being the son of Amalek. I mean, all the research has been done. Those people are saying that they're not the bloodline Israelites as well. All of this is just for political dominance and to keep receiving that money, because the jig will be up if they ever said, hey, we're not the Israelites. They're not the Israelites. Like I said, they are the Khazars. And like he said, Zionism is the problem. That is exactly correct, because what Zionism is saying that we will displace these Palestinians, that some have been there for hundreds of years, others have been there for thousands of years, going back to the time when the Israelites were occupied, when Christ was alive. Some of them never left. That's why some of the Palestinians are Israelites. But Zionism says you have to take those people and displace those people to give these other people a homeland. And the problem with that, it's like you're exchanging an evil for an evil. You know, evil was done to these Khazars, to these Edomites, to the sons of Japheth. So now they want to turn around and do the exact same thing to some other people that are in the land that have been there? Some of them have been there. You know what I'm saying? Here's the answer. The answer is they should go to the land where they're from. They're from Eastern Europe. That's where they should go back to. It's in the Ukraine and in those areas. That's where they're from. That's where they should go back to. They should build a state there. They're never going to have peace in this land where they are, because that's what the book says. The book says that there will not be peace in the land until the Israelites are back in the land, which also proves that they are not the children of Israel. I mean, it's so easy a caveman could do it. And the U.S. is the guarantor politically of Zionism. That's the U.S.'s problem. That's how they got their hands dirty. So let's go to a verse here regarding how the United States is a part of this, supporting Israel to their detriment. Let's get into these scriptures. Zechariah 12, verses 1 through 3. The burden of the word of the God of Israel. The Father, Yahweh, is the God of Israel, saith Yah, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about. And that's exactly what we're seeing. All the nations around there are concerned. This thing is getting ready to go through the roof. When they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Because that's the land as well as the people. Jerusalem is the land that's having all these problems, the wars and no peace. Judah is speaking of the people. Okay, which are the real Israelites, the children of Israel, which are identified by the curses in Deuteronomy 28, which includes the so-called African Americans, the so-called Latinos, the so-called natives, and then a bunch of us throughout every nation, throughout the four corners of the earth. Verse 3, and in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces. Through all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Here's the part. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces. This is the demise of the United States and the other European countries that are supporting Israel, which is like Britain, France, all of those. They are going to be cut into pieces because their hands are dirty from this. They give them the financial support, the bombs, all of that. That is what this verse is talking about. It's talking about the United States and Europe will be cut into pieces. And so a part of the master plan, the genius plan by Hamas, was to get the Palestinian state back on the table. That was their master plan. And he says some people from Palestine did commit atrocities. I would agree with that because some of the people that did come in behind the Hamas so-called military were full of anger, were full of hate, because they've been occupied for 67 years, which I'm not, saying that that's okay, the atrocities that were committed. But that's the reason why that happened. That's just the truth. So because of those atrocities, that gave Israel the upper hand in the counter-propaganda campaign, and that gave them the opportunity, even if it's only going to be for a limited amount of time, to commit genocide, to do what they say. It's called cutting the grass, as the Israelis call it, where they start cutting off and getting rid of some of the population of the Palestinian people, because it's a game of numbers. But it still was the greatest military operation in modern history, and I agree with Scott Ritter on that. Part of the trap was to have Israel overreact, which obviously you've seen that they've done that, to gain world sympathy and support, or just enough cover so that they can get in there and do collective punishment and genocide these children, these women, these babies. You see what I'm saying? And remember, here's some statistics. Over 50% of the Palestinians are 18 years old and below. You know why? Because their parents have been killed. 80% of them live in poverty. So, and when you hear about aid coming in, all that is welfare. How would you like to go live in a tent somewhere and be supported by welfare? You know what I'm saying? It's not what you want. It's a horrific life. Hamas knew that, and what they knew was that there's going to have to be some suffering in order for Palestine to be liberated. With the overreaction from Israel that they knew would be imminent, which were those atrocities that Israel has been committing, that collective punishment. And that collective punishment is a matter of policy of Israel. They did that in Beirut. So with Israel being so humiliated, they overcommitted, And like I said, Palestine knew that there was a price that had to be paid, and they're paying it. But the Palestinian people are strong. They're hanging in there. And like I always say, the Father sees it. He's going to take all these things into account. He's going to punish the people that need to be punished, and he's going to lift up the people that should be lifted up. All praises to the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is Crown Prince Media. I am the Crown Prince.
No one
Let's
can do it
go.
better.